Imagine standing at the foot of the glass monolith on New York's 57th Street, or strolling across the world past the gardens of Kensington Palace Gardens in London. As the sun sets, the city lights flicker on, but the upper floors of the world's most expensive residential towers often remain dark. These are the ghost towers of the global elite, architectural marvels that pierce the clouds, yet rarely echo with the sound of laughter or the clinking of glasses at dinner parties. To the casual observer, a dark window in a $100 million penthouse is simply a sign of waste. But to the sovereign investor, those dark windows are a signal of peak strategic efficiency. In this stratosphere, real estate has transcended the definition of a home. It is no longer about shelter or luxury. Instead, we are witnessing the rise of real estate as wealth storage. For the world's most powerful families, these properties function as a private physical gold standard, an unprintable reserve currency that exists outside the highly volatile fluctuations of the traditional banking system. When you buy like a sovereign, you aren't searching for a place to rest. You are securing a personal territory that acts as a hedge against the fragility of the modern world. There is a fundamental divide between the high net worth individual and the sovereign-style investor. While a millionaire might buy a villa for the view, the sovereign investor, represented by family offices, operates with different priorities. They look at a property and see a treasury bond made of stone. This mindset is built upon three pillars: the hidden anonymity, perpetual value, and jurisdictional arbitrage. Anonymity is the shield that protects the buyer's identity from prying eyes and the shifting tides of politics. Perpetual value ensures the asset remains desirable for centuries. Jurisdictional arbitrage is the art of moving capital into legal environments that favor absolute protection over heavy taxation and stability over growth. These investors don't just buy a house. They buy into an ecosystem that will defend their capital when the world is in turmoil. This quest for stability creates a curated map of global safe haven cities. Sovereign capital does not chase the highest returns, it chases the safest harbors. This is why Tier 1 cities like London, Zurich, and Singapore act as global vaults rather than just urban centers. In these jurisdictions, the rule of law is the ultimate luxury. A sovereign investor understands a truth. A 5% loss in a stable regime with ironclad property rights is preferable to a 100% gain in a volatile market. They want the absolute certainty that if a crisis strikes, their title deed will still be recognized and their asset will remain untouched. In Zurich, it is the tradition of neutrality. In Singapore, it is the strategic position at the crossroads of the economy. These cities are not just locations, they are insurance policies against the vast unknown. To adopt this mindset requires a psychological shift and almost clinical detachment. While a typical buyer might fall in love with a French chateau, the sovereign player views these features with an extremely cold eye they would apply to a government bond. They look past trends to investigate land rights, air rights, and the legacy horizon. This perspective spans a century. They are buying for the great-grandchildren, looking for assets that can withstand the erosion of time. Before we continue exploring how the titans of wealth engineer their privacy and find the hidden deals that never reach the public, subscribe to the channel and tell us in the comments where you are watching from. This long-term vision separates the temporary wealthy individual from the permanently powerful. When you look through the lens of 100 years, the noise of every market volatility fades away, leaving only the very structural integrity of the asset and the sovereign protection it provides. You are no longer just a homeowner. You are the guardian of a legacy truly built to last. This legacy is protected by an invisible infrastructure known as the Architecture of Secrecy. For the sovereign investor, the ultimate luxury is not a gilded staircase, but total, impenetrable privacy. The goal of the invisible purchase is to ensure that the individual's name never appears on a public deed or a government registry where prying eyes might find it. To achieve this, the purchase is filtered through a complex web of special-purpose vehicles, often referred to as SPVs, shell companies, and blind trusts. These entities are not designed to evade the law, but to shield the owner from the social and political risks of high-visibility wealth. When a $100 million estate in Bel Air or a historic townhouse in Mayfair changes hands, the public record might only show a nameless holding company registered in a jurisdiction like the Cayman Islands or Delaware. This layer of separation creates a buffer between the asset and the individual, ensuring that their personal life remains decoupled from their massive capital movements. Navigating this labyrinth requires the expertise of the gatekeepers. These are the elite law firms and family offices that act as the first line of defense. They do not merely facilitate transactions, they vet every potential acquisition with the scrutiny of a military intelligence operation. Before a sovereign investor even sees a property, the gatekeepers have already analyzed the legal structure, the tax implications, and the potential for future regulatory shifts. They are the ones who ensure that the architecture of secrecy remains intact, coordinating with specialized tax consultants and privacy experts to maintain a wall of silence around the family's holdings. For these professionals, a successful deal is one that nobody ever hears about. This preference for silence has given birth to a parallel universe known as the shadow market. In the world of sovereign-grade real estate, the most prestigious assets are never found on a public website or a common listing portal. If a property is being advertised to the general public, the sovereign investor likely considers it already burned. Instead, they rely on the pocket listing ecosystem. This is a private network where specialized brokers move multi-million-dollar assets in total hush-hush environments. A broker might wait years for the right moment to mention a specific penthouse to a specific family office, knowing that the transaction will only happen if the circle of knowledge remains incredibly small. These deals are built on decades of trust and relationships, where a handshake in a private club in Zurich carries more weight than a formal marketing campaign. Even the way these properties are financed differs from the traditional market. One might assume that a billionaire would pay cash for a home, but the sovereign investor understands the power of financial engineering. They often utilize strategic debt, taking out mortgages even when they have the liquidity to buy the property 10 times over. This is not out of necessity, but for interest rate arbitrage and liquidity management. By borrowing against the property at a low interest rate, they can keep their primary capital invested in high-yield markets, effectively making the property pay for itself. Furthermore, they integrate these acquisitions with other high-value assets through the use of Freeports. These ultra-secure, tax-neutral warehouses allow them to store associated assets like fine art or classic cars in close proximity to their global hubs, creating a consolidated portfolio of wealth that is both mobile and protected from immediate tax liabilities. Finally, the due diligence process for a sovereign buy goes far beyond checking the quality of the marble or the kitchen finishes. It is a clinical analysis of the asset's long-term viability. They investigate air rights to ensure no future skyscraper will ever block their view or devalue the property. They analyze environmental sustainability ratings, knowing that institutional buyers of the future will prioritize buildings with high ESG scores. Most importantly, they perform a geopolitical risk assessment. They are looking for the next safe haven before the mass market even realizes a shift is happening. By the time the general public recognizes a city as a new global vault, the sovereign investor has already been there for a decade, anchored by the ironclad security of their clinical, long-term strategy. Building on the clinical due diligence of the previous phase, the sovereign investor begins the process of balancing the portfolio through what is known as a core plus strategy. While the ghost towers of New York and the silent townhouses of London serve as the ultimate vaults for capital preservation, these trophy assets often generate zero immediate yield. To offset this, the investor strategically diversifies into high-end income-generating assets, such as luxury multi-use developments or exclusive branded residences in emerging hotspots. By mixing the absolute security of a non-yielding trophy with the cash flow of a premium rental property, they create a self-sustaining ecosystem of wealth. This geographical movement is often dictated by shifting geopolitical sands and the allure of strategic relocation. Programs like golden visas or citizenship by investment act as secondary catalysts. For the sovereign investor, purchasing a penthouse in Greece or a sprawling villa in Portugal is rarely about the summer vacation. It is about securing a second or third jurisdictional anchor. This ensures that the family always has a sanctuary and a legal foothold in multiple stable corners of the globe, providing a fail-safe against domestic instability. Once the acquisition is finalized, the focus shifts from the purchase to the long-term defense of the asset. This is where the property manager enters the stage, not merely as a caretaker, but as a chief operating officer of a private sovereign estate. The maintenance of these properties is a high-stakes operation involving specialized security details, constant technical updates, and the management of social risk. In an era where shifting urban regulations, such as new vacancy taxes in Vancouver or stringent transparency laws in the United Kingdom, threaten the silent nature of these holdings, the property manager must be a master of strategic adaptation. They ensure the asset remains compliant with local laws without sacrificing the owner's anonymity or the property's value. This management layer is the invisible wall that protects the investment from the administrative friction of the host nation, ensuring the property remains a liquid store of value, regardless of local political winds or changing tax codes. While the scale of these institutional-grade deals may seem out of reach for the individual, the lessons from the sovereign playbook are increasingly being adapted by the modern high-end investor. The core principle remains the same: prioritize location scarcity and structural integrity over fleeting aesthetic trends. While a common buyer might be swayed by a celebrity designer or a temporary architectural fad, the astute investor looks for the unreproducible quality of a piece of land or the historical significance of a facade that cannot be built again. This mindset is now bleeding into the digital realm through the rise of digital sovereignty. Blockchain technology and fractionalized luxury ownership are beginning to mimic the diversification strategies once reserved for sovereign wealth funds. It is now possible for a smaller investor to own a fraction of a Tier 1 trophy asset, benefiting from the same jurisdictional arbitrage and capital stability that defines the ultra-elite. Ultimately, the journey of the sovereign investor reveals that luxury real estate has evolved far beyond the realm of shelter or status symbols. It has become the ultimate tool for family preservation in an increasingly uncertain world. In a century defined by digital volatility and shifting borders, a physical anchor in a stable jurisdiction represents the highest form of security. As the world watches the lights remain dim in the towers of the elite, they are not seeing empty buildings, they are seeing a global reserve currency cast in concrete and steel. This is the final resolution of the sovereign strategy: to treat one's holdings not as a collection of properties, but as a sovereign territory for their own legacy. By looking past the marble and the glass to the underlying power of the land and the law, the investor ensures that their wealth is not just earned, but protected for the next 100 years. The ghost towers are not monuments to absence, but silent witnesses to a future that has already been secured for the generations to come. This is the transformation of property into power.